Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the second tier list for 8.1, and this one's going to be for jungle. So these are going to be the strongest junglers here heading into the new ranked season. So for the tier 1 in this patch, to start off the video, we're going to have 5 junglers here for this patch, and the first one is going to be Shyvana. So in my opinion, Shyvana is probably one of the most low risk, high reward junglers in this patch. The reason for it is because she's just a super easy jungler to play. There's not too much to Shyvana. She doesn't have any crazy hard skill shots to land. You basically just point and click with your auto attacks and you're going to have great success on the champion. She's really good right now with press the attack. It's very easy for Shyvana to proc that super fast, get the bonus damage going, and she's also really good right now with the recent buffs to Tiamat. Celerity and Water Walking are extremely good on Shyvana too. If you're not taking these runes as your secondary on Shyvana, then I think you're playing her wrong, because the amount of bonus damage you can get from taking Water Walking and Celerity and just the bonus movement speed that you get with your W, the synergy between those three things is really good, and it just allows you to do a ton of extra damage, especially if you do fight the enemy jungler or just fight anyone when you are in the river. And then also, once you get Blood Razor on Shyvana, I think that spike is one of the strongest for any jungler right now. If you got Red Smite as well, then there's very few junglers that can actually outduel you once you pick up that item. So I just think that she is a really good jungler, super easy to play, and just very strong overall. So the second jungler in the tier 1 for this patch is going to be Xin Zhao, and in my opinion, Xin Zhao is basically the more reliant version of Shyvana, because Xin Zhao and Shyvana, they're both pretty easy junglers to play. Their kits aren't too complex, but I think that Xin Zhao is a little bit stronger if you know how to play him well in the early game, because he does have the potential to snowball the early game a lot harder than a Shyvana does. Xin Zhao's ganks, especially like his level 2 ganks even, are really strong. What you can do on this champion is you can start red buff sometimes. If your mid laner, for example, is playing someone that does have some crowd control at level 1 or level 2, for example, if they're playing Ryze, then you can tell that Ryze to start W level 1, you can level 2 gank for him, and at the very least, you're gonna burn their flash and you're gonna force them to base. So I just think that because Xin Zhao, he can have very unique paths in the jungle, and because he does have a very strong early game, he is one of the better junglers for 8.1. Other things that make Xin Zhao strong in this patch are the fact that press the attack is also really good on him. He's got the attack speed steroid from his E. He's also got the auto attack reset in his kit with his Q, so it's very easy, like Shyvana, to proc that press the attack fast. He's also great with sudden impact as well, because once he dashes on the opponent with his E, he's going to gain that extra lethality. And then one thing that I don't think a lot of people really take into consideration as to why this pick is strong right now is I think his ultimate is just really good in this meta. We're seeing a lot of long range poke champions being played in the mid lane. Xerath right now has one of the highest win rates, and your ultimate against a Xerath in a team fight can be super strong. You can dive onto your target, and Xerath is going to be sitting in the back line, but he's not going to be able to deal any damage to you. So against certain team comps, I think that because of Xin Zhao's ultimate, he can just be a very, very strong pick. So next up here is what I would call the strongest snowball jungler for this patch, at least in my opinion, and it's Kha'Zix. So I think that if you can play Kha'Zix well, if you can do well in the early game on him, you know how to pressure in the early game, then I think that this jungler, his ability to just snowball the early game and just completely take over a game is better than any jungler in this patch. He's really good with a lot of the new runes. Electrocute and sudden impact just allow him to deal even more burst damage. He's also, in my opinion, one of the hardest junglers to deal with in solo queue if he does get a lead, because he's got the invis in his kit with his ultimate. So once you get ahead on Kha'Zix, you just constantly keep going into the enemy jungle. They're not going to know where you are because of your ultimate, and I find a lot of the time if I'm playing against a Kha'Zix, he'll just pop out of nowhere in the jungle, he'll one-shot you, and he'll just keep doing that over and over again if he does get a lead. So I just think it's super hard to play against this champion if he does know how to play his early game well. So next up here is going to be Evelynn, and in my pick ban video for this patch, I referred to Evelynn as basically the AP version of Kha'Zix, and the reason I think this is because she's very similar to Kha'Zix in the sense that if you get ahead with Evelynn, then you're going to be able to just completely take over a game if you know how to play her well. You're going to be able to pretty much constantly assassinate whoever you want on the enemy team, and I think that Evelynn's assassination potential, if ahead, is one of the strongest for any jungler because it's very low risk, high reward. You can get in on your priority target, burst them down, and then if you need to, you can use your ultimate to just get right out of there. And I think that that's one of the main reasons as to why she's so strong. There's not really too much risk in diving in and trying to go for that assassination, because even if you don't get it for some reason, you do have your ultimate to just get yourself out of there right away. And then one last thing to note here about Evelynn, a lot of you guys probably already know this, but for those of you who don't, what a lot of pro players are doing right now on Evelynn is they're building a Frostfang on their first back. Now the reason you want to do this is because Frostfang is a very cost efficient item, especially if you pick it up early on into the game. It gives you 18 extra damage per ability use, and because Evelynn does have, she does have a very easy way at proccing the extra damage from Frostfang with all of her abilities. The amount of extra damage you get from this item in the early game is really good. It also does give you a little bit of CDR, which is great for Evelynn. And then it also gives you some mana regen as well, so it's overall just a great cost-efficient item, and if you haven't been buying it yet on Evelynn, then I would definitely recommend doing it. And the final jungler to round out the tier 1s for this patch is going to be Warwick. Warwick is another one of these just pretty simple junglers, but is definitely very effective for solo queue. I think his kit is just great for solo queue because number one, he's just one of the strongest skirmishing junglers. So if you get into a 2v2 scenario in the early game, or especially if you go for a counter gank with Warwick, then a lot of the time you're just gonna straight up win that because he's got sustain in his kit with his Q. He's also got damage reduction with his E. His E's gonna fear them as well. So overall, his kit is just great for skirmishing, and that's really good in solo queue because you're gonna get into a lot of those situations in the early game. Warwick is also benefiting a lot from the recent changes in the past couple of patches. So T-Mat did get buffed in 7.24, which does help out Warwick quite a bit. The base damage buff in the preseason that he got also helps him out if you will be building Sheen. Quite a few Warwick players do go for Sheen, and then whether or not they finish Trinity Force off or not just depends on how well you're snowballing in the early game. But if you do get a good snowball going with Warwick and you grab Trinity Force, then this champion does a ton of damage, and then after that you can build full tank. You really only need like 1, maybe 2 damage items. You go full tank after that, and you can still pretty much just assassinate the squishy target on the enemy team whenever you want to. And then one thing I think that is very underrated about Warwick's kit is the fact that his W allows him to get around the map very fast, and it just allows him to be pretty much in 2 places at once. If you do notice, or if the enemy team does get low on HP, then you're going to be able to get down there super fast. It allows Warwick to counter gank really well, and it just allows him to pick up kills that a lot of other junglers would not be able to pick up. So now we're going to take a look at a few tier 2 picks in this patch, and what I'm really looking out for in 8.1 here is Skarner. Now Skarner, he was on the edge for me as to whether I should include him in tier 1 for this patch, but the reason I didn't is because he still is, people are still kind of getting used to him in this patch, and it's not clear exactly how strong the pick is yet, but I think that if he does keep trending upward like he is in this patch, then he could end up in tier 1 for 8.2. The buffs to Skarner are helping him out a lot. What people are doing now on him, and what you should be doing, is max E now on Skarner. Most people are still maxing Q out on him, but the people who do max E on Skarner have a much higher win rate, and the buffs to his E just make it the better max now for 8.1. Now, if you're interested in what the build is for Skarner, what's working best right now is going for a Cinder Hulk, after that going Trinity Force, and then a Righteous Glory into a Sterix. Trinity Force and Sterix are great on Skarner because of the base damage buffs in the preseason. Trinity Force is great on him, and then because Sterix does increase your base damage, your Sheen procs are going to be doing a ton of damage once you do pick up those 2 items. And then another pick that in my opinion is like borderline tier 1 is Udyr. So I think that Udyr can be a very strong pick. He's great with press the attack. T-Mat also did get buffed in 7.24, so that does help him out quite a bit. The reason to why I have him in tier 2 though is because I just don't think he's the best blind pick, and I don't think he's just the best pick for all scenarios. When you are playing Udyr, if you don't snowball hard in the early game and you're up against an enemy comp that does have a lot of lockdown CC, it is going to be quite a bit harder for you to succeed during mid to late game team fights than some of these other junglers, because you just don't have a gap closer in your kit and you do rely on your flash to get onto the back line as long as they are spacing properly and they don't allow you to just run right up to you. So overall, I do think he's a great pick. He could be tier 1, but he's not the best blind pick in my opinion, which is why I do have him in tier 2. And then for the tier 3 picks in this patch, these are just the average champions. They can still be alright and they can be good in certain situations or if you do main them, but I would try to stay away from these picks. If you can play a champion in the tier 1 or in the tier 2, then in my opinion, they are going to give you quite a bit of a better chance at winning than if you are playing these champions in the tier 3. And then for the tier 4 picks, these are the picks that I would just 100% stay away from if you are looking to climb. These picks just are completely outclassed right now by the champions that are in tier 1 and in tier 2, and even by some of the champions in the tier 3. Now, one pick here that you might be surprised about is the Graves. Now, Graves did end up getting those buffs in this patch, but they really did not help him out at all, and he still is performing pretty poorly in 8.1 here, so I just would not recommend playing any of these champions if your main goal is to climb, unless you're like a one trick of them and you really know them inside and out. But even then, you're still probably going to struggle with them compared to the tier 1 or the tier 2 picks. So that is going to be all for this video. This was the jungle tier list for patch 8.1. So this should give you a pretty good idea and a pretty good reference to go off of what's strong in 8.1 here and what you should be looking to prioritize heading into the new ranked season. If you guys did enjoy this video, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I'll see you in my next video.